Hey, Pastor Tarun here. Welcome to Authentic Church. It's so good to have you with us. We really pray that this sermon blesses you and helps you to experience the authentic love of Jesus Christ in your life today. Hey, before we get into the message, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so that we can keep you up to date with the latest sermons every week? All right, here's the message.
Hey, we've been doing a 2-week series called Together, and we're looking at the scripture in Matthew where Jesus says, where 2 or 3 gather together as my followers, I am there among them. Jesus understood that there was something powerful when believers in Him gathered together. God does something powerful when 2 or 3 believers get together and are in unity together. That is something more significant than can be achieved when we are one or by ourselves. And so I want to wrap up this series today and to take a look at, some of the reasons why it's important to value the intentional gathering together. And when I talk about gathering, I'm talking about gathering here at church on a Sunday, but also gathering in life groups. The reason we have life groups is because we understand that you can't do life alone. As much as some of you introverts might like to do life alone, I'm a bit of an introvert. I like my alone time. I feel recharged when I'm by myself. I also understand that I can't live like that long term. It's not healthy for me. It's not good for me. And so today I want to look at some of the reasons why it's important to value gathering together with fellow believers on a regular basis. This is why we have life groups. If you've never heard the term, they are small groups that gather every week. We are relaunching this Wednesday, and they pray together, have some food together, have some fun and conversation together, and study the Word together. But more than anything, why we call them life groups, because it's all about doing life together. None of us is an island. None of us can do life by ourselves. And you know, maybe some of you are thinking, if you're not currently in a life group, maybe you're thinking to yourself things like, oh, look, I really don't like being in groups of people. I get that. You know, some of you might be in a place in your life where groups of people make you feel anxious or a bit stressed, and I do understand that. But I want to encourage you to really pray through it, because what you will find is that social anxieties and isolation will actually exacerbate that feeling. The longer you stay isolated, the less you want to be around people, but the more it has a detriment on your mental state and your heart state as well. You know, some of you might be thinking, I don't have the time. I understand. We all live very busy lives now, and you know, my wife and I are no different. We've got kids in school, they've got activities, we've got, you know, things 3 nights a week for church. We understand busy. But what I would say to you is that gathering together is not something that you fit in around your other stuff, but what you have to do is make a decision to be intentional about gathering with the saints. Many years ago, Melanie and I were going through a rough time in our marriage, and one of the best decisions we made is we made a decision to be intentional about gathering together with the body of Christ. What we did was we said in our calendar, we said Sunday is not optional. I don't wake up on a Sunday saying to myself, I wonder what I'll do today. Well, obviously, because I'm the pastor, and that would be kind of awkward if the pastor didn't turn up. But even before we were pastors, we always knew where we were on a Sunday morning. We're always at church. Our kids never say to us on a Saturday, are we going to church tomorrow? They don't. They say things like, do we have to go to church tomorrow? Because they know there's no option. In the Stevenson house, church is not negotiable. When Emma came to live with us a couple of years ago, it was a little bit of a shock to her system because we said church is not negotiable. But now, what does she say? What time are we leaving for church? She knows church is not negotiable. Okay? Life groups are not negotiable. What we do is we make them a priority, and then we fit everything else around it. If I have to make other appointments, my appointments are never on a Sunday morning. Okay? My appointments are never when life group is. Because I understand that if we're really to achieve all that God has intended us to achieve as believers, then we have to be around other people who are like-minded, who are going to spur us on, who are going to encourage us, who are going to uphold us for us to move forward in what God has intended for us to do. Is anybody still with me? Yeah? There's a great song. It was, some of you older folk may know it well. It was a Cat Stevens song, Cats in the Cradle. Do you remember that song? The story about a dad who was too busy to spend time with his son. Every time his son wanted to play catch, every time his son wanted to hang out, his dad would say, "Not right now, son, I've got a work trip," or "We'll do it when I come home," or "Yeah, maybe next week." And then one day that father grew up and his son became a father, and he as an older man felt lonely, and he would call his son and he would say, "Hey son, why don't we catch up?" And his son started to repeat back to him the same things that he used to say to him. "Not today, Dad. I'm too busy. I've got a work thing on. I'm traveling this week. Maybe next week." And suddenly the father realized that his son had learned to be just like him. Always too busy for the important relationships. And then when you're at a stage where you realize how important relationships are, you realize that all the important people in your life are too busy to spend time with you. And unless we get intentional about relationships in our life now, it's not going to change when we're older. Some of you are at that stage now where you're realizing that the relationships that you would like to have close to you, they're not close anymore. For some of you, it's too late. For some of you, you realize that you should have spent more time with mum or dad while they were still alive, and now that option is not available. And so I want to encourage you, don't put off what you can do for tomorrow, what you can do today. Because your relationships, the relationships you have in your life, become pivotal in every single circumstance of your life. How you experience life, how you view life, how your marriage goes, your work, your raising children, your finances are all impacted by the relationships you have. And unless you prioritize the right relationships, as we talked about last week, what you're going to find is those relationships can either take you towards what God has intended or away from what God has intended. So today what I want to talk about is the title of my message is "Two are better than one." If you're taking notes, two are better than one. There's a great book in the Old Testament called Ecclesiastes. If you've never read it, I'll give you a little bit of history on Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon. King Solomon was he was the son of King David, and he was known to be the wisest man in the world. When he became king, God asked him, "What would you like of me, Solomon? What would I give you? I'll give you anything." And King Solomon said, "Give me wisdom. Give me godly wisdom." And so God gave him wisdom, and he was so wise that he managed to rule a nation in a way that everybody, all the surrounding nations, wanted to come and visit, wanted to learn from him, wanted to give him gifts. He was wealthy beyond imagine. He was successful. He was one of the most powerful kings in the history of Israel. And towards the end of his life, King Solomon starts to reflect on his life and starts to ask the question, what was the point? What's the point of life? And he started to realize that there was a whole bunch of things in his life that he prioritized, that he gave attention to, that in the end were quite worthless, that didn't bring him the satisfaction that he thought they would bring him. And in chapter 4 of Ecclesiastes, Solomon says this. He says, "There was a case of a man who was all alone, without a child or a brother, and yet he worked hard to gain much wealth, as much wealth as he could. And then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's all meaningless and depressing." Solomon was one of the richest men in the world. He worked hard. He had all the trappings of success, but he realized that when he had nobody to share it with, no son, no brother, that he had really had nothing. It didn't matter about all the wealth he had accumulated, all the success, all the Instagram followers, all of the collaborations that he was doing with other brands, all of the recognition he got on Snapchat and Facebook. He didn't care about any of that at the end of the day because he didn't have any meaningful relationships in his life. He said, look at all this. I've got the new car, I've got the new house, but I don't have anyone to share it with. And the first thing I think that relationships tell us, purposeful relationships tell us, is that relationships give meaning to your life. We live in an age where many young people believe that the purpose of life is to become famous or become rich, or both. You know, when I worked in high school, I would sit with young people and I would ask them the question, what do you want to do when you leave high school? Do you know the number one thing that most people said to me, most young people said to me? I want to be a famous YouTuber, I want to be TikTok famous or Instagram famous. That's the number one job aspiration amongst young people today. I want to be famous and I want to be rich. The problem is this, many of them, and we see this in the media now, many of the so-called Insta-famous people are also finding out that Insta-fame doesn't get you out of trouble. Insta-fame doesn't get you out of scandal. Insta-fame doesn't give you meaning or purpose to your life. It's something to get recognized. It's another thing to actually come home at night and know that you are loved unconditionally, whether you're famous or not. Hello? It's one thing to have all the wealth in the world. It's another thing to know that you actually poured your blood, sweat, and tears and you worked for somebody else. You know, many of us do jobs that we may not love. And I know that for many years I've done jobs that I did not love. And the one thing that kept me going was this. I know I'm doing it for a bigger purpose, and that's my children and my wife. You know, when you have relationships that matter, the mundane of life suddenly has meaning and purpose. Do you know life's full of mundane things? Life is not one big party, if you haven't noticed. You know, I reckon if you counted on your fingers how many significant days you've had in your life, you'd probably struggle to get more than 10. You know, there was probably one or two significant birthdays, maybe your 18th birthday, maybe your 21st birthday. After a while, you stop counting birthdays and stop celebrating them. Maybe it was your wedding day. Maybe it was your first day of school. Maybe it was your first job or a promotion that you got. You know, we've all got these significant memories in our life, but if you really count them up over the span of your life, there's 10, maybe 12 significant days in our life. The rest of the days sort of feel a little bit like the Twilight Zone, don't they? Groundhog Day, I just get up in the morning, I go to work, I come home, I get up, I go to work, I come home. And if you're anything like me, you probably found yourself saying, why do I do this? I feel like I'm in a loop. My life feels like it keeps just going around in circles. Well, I'll tell you what, when you have meaningful relationships, you suddenly know why you do it. I know why I get up every morning. I get up because I have a family that I love and I want to make sure that they're cared for and provided for. Why do I do what I do here? You know, I was saying to one young person who was asking about being in the ministry, I said, do you know what? 80% of my week is doing stuff I don't love, so I can spend 20% of my week doing the one thing I do love, and that's being in church, sharing with you guys. I mean, I'm up here for 30 minutes preaching, but I spend like 50 hours in the week doing other stuff like running cafes and mopping floors and doing accounting and managing people and doing all the boring stuff that makes this one 30-minute episode meaningful. You know what I'm saying? Life's full of dull stuff, but it becomes meaningful because of the people and the relationships that you are with. And Jesus understood this. Jesus understood this. Unless you have people that care about you, unless you have people that share this life with you, the meaninglessness becomes too much. This is why so many have turned to addictive substances, have turned to lives that are out of control. Why, you know, we say things like, I'm living for the weekend. If you're living for the weekend, you might like to examine what your week is like, because you've probably got a really sad week if your weekend's the highlight. But the thing is, that happens when we don't have any meaningful relationships in our life to keep us going. If we don't have a reason. And Solomon understood this. And in chapter 2, verse 9, he said, I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me. My wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. It sounds a little bit like people today, doesn't it? I denied myself no pleasure. I found every great pleasure in hard work and reward for my labor. But as I looked at everything my work had accomplished, it was meaningless. It was like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. If you've ever wondered why Jesus said, when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my midst, there am I, that's your first reason. Because when you gather, it gives you meaning. It gives you purpose for all the other stuff you do through the week. Are you still tracking with me? The second reason I believe that Jesus understood that it was important to gather is that our ability to succeed in life is actually tied to relationship. You know, there's an old saying in the business world that says your net worth is dependent on your network. The people you know and you're connected to will determine how far you go in business or life. Jim Rohn once said, you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So whatever your life looks like right now, that's kind of the average of the people you hang around with. So if you want to increase your averages, you've got to hang out with people that are going to lift you up, not pull you down. Your relationship, your marriage success is dependent on the people that you hang around. If you're hanging around people that hate their marriage and are always criticizing their spouse, guess what you're going to start doing? You know, it's called confirmation bias. Your brain actually latches onto negativity, and it says if you create a belief about something, you'll start noticing it in that person. If you think your husband is lazy, guess what? You're going to notice all the instances that prove you're right. See, he's lazy. He's sitting on the couch again. See, he's lazy. He couldn't pick up his underpants off the floor. My wife never says that to me. If you think your wife doesn't pay you enough attention, well, guess what? You'll start noticing all the times that she doesn't pay you attention. She's on Facebook again. She's watching TV again. She's going out with her friends again. Your brain takes on the characteristics that you convince yourself of, and guess where that comes from? Your relationships. The people you hang around, what they say to you, how they act will become your mantra, will become the lens that you view life through. How you parent your children is dependent on the relationships you keep. How your children are raised will be the example that you watch from other people. I mean, nobody teaches you how to be a parent, do they? They don't come with manuals. Lord, I wish they did. I'd be a rich man if I could write a manual on raising children. You know, people sometimes say to me, because I teach in schools on behavior management, and they sometimes say to me, have you ever thought about writing a parenting book? I said, talk to me when my children are 25 and they're all successful and they're all doing well. Then I'll tell you whether I can do parenting or not. Because right now, I'm not so sure. I've got a ways to go. You see, it's hard, but if you hang around people who encourage you in your parenting, who are able to lift you up, who are able to give you advice, who are able to be positive about it, what happens? You become a better parent. Your walk with God, your career, your finance, everything is influenced by the relationships you keep in your life. You know, the mission of this church is to reach the unchurched with the authentic love and life of Jesus Christ. Did you know that? Now you do. I can't do that by myself. Melanie can't do that by herself. There's 300,000 people in Logan. We can't reach 300,000 people by ourselves, but with all of you, we can. When we're in community, we can achieve things together that we would never be able to achieve by ourselves. And Solomon understood this. You know, Solomon said in chapter 4, verse 9, he says this, 2 people are better off than one because they help each other succeed. When you're working together, you get further in life. I've just become part of a business networking group. We actually host them in the church cafe every Friday. And I've been loving sitting in this group of business owners who every week come together. And every week you have to stand up and you have to say, I need a connection in this area of industry. So I need a connection with somebody who's in a high school who wants to have breakfast programs in the high school. Do you know what? By the end of the meeting, I have 3 people come up to me and say, oh, I know somebody at Parklands High School. I know somebody at Marsden High School. I'll give you the number for somebody over here. I can do far more with other people than I can do by myself. I don't know everybody in all the high schools. Melanie doesn't know, but a group of 15 business people that know the community, well, together we get more done. And this is what Jesus was talking about. When you get together regularly, where you share your needs, where you help people to understand, I'm not always okay. I don't always have all the answers, but I know that somebody in this group does. Somebody can pick me up. Somebody can help me. Then what happens is we start to move forward instead of backwards. We start to do what God has called us to do rather than regressing. Is everyone still tracking with me so far? You know, one of the things I've been fascinated with about life is what relationship does, and I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but what relationship does to the seemingly mundane things in life. You know, I'm a songwriter. And one of the things that used to really frustrate me is I couldn't get my music out there. I couldn't get live performances. I couldn't release my CDs, or I couldn't get people to buy my CDs. And people used to say to me, why don't you just enjoy writing the songs? Just enjoy the song. I said, I'll tell you why. Because my songs are not complete until somebody listens to them. You see, art is never complete until it's enjoyed with another person. Artists never create for themselves. Artists always create for somebody else. A painting is not beautiful until it hangs on a wall and is shared with somebody else to observe its beauty. Food is always better when it's with people. When I'm by myself and I make a meal, what do you normally do? You go for something quick, easy. You never put any effort in. 2-minute noodles and a chopped up hot dog, best alone meal you could ever have. But when I have people in my house, man, I go to town. I love to cook. Why? Because food is meaningful when it's in relationship. Food becomes friendship when you're sitting across from somebody. Food is sad when you're by yourself. You see, all of these things in life that God has given us find new substance, new meaning, new endeavor, new scope when we involve other people in the process. And finally, what I want to talk about is relationships keep us secure. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed one day a number of years ago, and I was frustrated by something in my life. I can't remember what it was. I don't know whether it was my work or family or something, or my wife, or I don't know, probably not my wife. But I was sitting on my bed and I was frustrated, and I had this habit of saying to God, God, why? Why has this always happened to me? Why? Has anybody ever said that before? You feel overwhelmed by life. You feel like life is getting you down. And you say, God, why me? And I remember God speaking to me quite clearly. And he said, why not you? What makes you think that you shouldn't suffer like everybody else? And suddenly it dawned on me. We all struggle in life. We all have bad days. We all feel frustrated. We all get overwhelmed by the pressures on us. That's nothing special. And what we've got to do is we've got to realize that life is struggle. Life is suffering. And that's not the problem. The problem is not the struggle or the suffering. The problem is how you navigate it. And you always navigate struggle better when you have people in your life rather than when you're trying to do it yourself. Am I right? It's always better when you're struggling to sit down with a friend over a coffee and share your problems or share your heart than it is to sit alone in your room and ruminate over how hard your life is and why you hate your life so much. It's always better when somebody says to you, how are you? And they actually mean it and they want to listen to you say, how are you? I was sitting with a friend recently and I hadn't seen him in a very long time. And I said, how are you? And he said, yeah, I'm good. And he had this like smile on his face. And I looked in his eyes and he looked like he was going to cry. And I stared at him and I said, no, really, how are you? And he said, I'm not good at all. He said, I'm broken. He said, I'm burning out. I haven't been the same since my mum died. I can't cope. And I said, have you got anyone in your life that you are talking to that is helping you through this? And he said, no, I've got nobody. I've just withdrawn. I just keep to myself. I said, man, you've got to involve people in your life. See, here he was putting on a mask. He was saying, I'm fine. And he's known as the funny guy. But inside, he's broken. He's not coping. And so often we encounter people and we see their mask. But sometimes we've got to see past their mask and we've got to actually ask them how they are and wait long enough for a response. You know, Australians are really bad at this. We use how are you as a greeting. And there is a standard response. What's the standard response? Good, thanks. Have you ever said to somebody when they say, how are you? Have you ever said to them, I'm not so good today? Have you ever seen their expression? I remember saying that once to somebody in church. They said, how are you? And I said, oh, not really that good. I've had a really tough week. And their eyes went wide. And they said to me, I wasn't actually meaning to get into anything deep with you. I was just saying hello. It was like they stepped in it. It was like they were trying to back out of it now. See, the thing is, if we don't have good people in our life that we can share our life with, suffering does become overwhelming. Struggle does become overwhelming. It's not that God intended us to be pain-free. Pain helps us grow. Pain is not always bad. Pain shows us when stuff needs to be changed in our life. But how we navigate pain is really what's important. And we always navigate it best when we're with people who can encourage us, who can pray with us, who can lift us up. And so I want to encourage all of you as I come to a close today. I know it's a brief message today, but I think the message is quite clear. If you don't have people in your life that you would call good relationships, when I say good relationships, people who are going to help you be all that God has called you to be. People who are going to sit with you when you're struggling. People who are going to lift you up, who are going to pray with you, who are going to help you become all that God has called you to be. If you don't have people like that in your life, we're going to make it really, really easy for you. Just join a life group. Because you saw them this morning, there's a whole bunch of people who lead life groups because they have a heart to help others grow. They have a heart to help others be the best that they can be. And we've got life groups for everything. We've got high schoolers that meet on a Friday night. We've got young adults that meet on a Wednesday night. We've got older folk that meet during the day on a Tuesday and on a Wednesday night. We've got a ladies group that meets on a Wednesday. We've got, who else have we got? Nick and Louise have got family groups. We've got young families. Life groups are starting this year. And we're trying to do it in a way that everybody feels comfortable. You know, the young families, we understand that it's hard to get out in the middle of the week with your kids. So we're going to do something on a Sunday afternoon. We're going to go to the park so the kids can run around and the parents can be together and encourage one another. The high schoolers, we get them together on a Friday so they can play games and they can do stuff that high schoolers like to do. You see, and it's not so much about the activity, it's about getting together and building relationship. And I want to encourage you, if you are sitting here saying, I really need a group of people to do life with, then I want to encourage you, join a life group. Go to our Connect page. You can use the QR code on the back of the seat or go to authenticchurch.com.au/connect, or you can go to the welcome desk and say, I want to join a life group. It's that easy. And there's a little search field and you put in your suburb that you live in and it will bring up all the life groups that are close to you. And then you can pick which life group you want to go to and one of those leaders will get in touch with you. It's that easy. This Wednesday, we start life groups again. If you're not in a life group, be in a life group. If you're looking for a place to call home, a church to call home, I know there are some people who are visiting us. I want to encourage you, just get plugged in. We would love to have you. If you want a family to call home, Authentic Church can be your family. But just don't do life alone. God's best for you is found in relationship. God's best for you is found in community. God's best for you is found when 2 or 3 gather together and Jesus is in the middle. Amen? Amen. Come on. Now don't just clap because I made you feel good. Do something about it. All right? Do something about it. Don't leave today without doing something about it. Because you can clap and you can walk away and you can do nothing and nothing will change. You know that, don't you? Jesus said the wise man is the person that listens to my words and actually does something about it. The foolish man is the one who listens to my words and does nothing about it. He's like a person that built his house on the sand. And when the storms of life come, his house will fall down. Don't just clap and go home and do nothing. Go and do something about it. Find community. And if you need help finding community, we're here to help you find community. Amen?
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really pray that that message blessed you. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it also? And hit a like and give us a comment because we'd love to hear back from you. If you'd like to give to the work of Authentic Church or get more involved, head over to our website, authenticchurch.com.au. We look forward to seeing you next time.